Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am very excited to have as my guest, Lynn. And let me tell you a little bit about Hannah. She describes herself as a person who helps high-achieving women end burnout. She has a diverse background as both a holistic health practitioner and a user experience designer. Hannah cares deeply about the experience women have on their journey towards success. So today we are going to talk about how to overcome the 5 success traps that lead to burnout. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Lynn. Hi, Hannah.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to be here.
So excited. You know, it's a topic that we could talk about every single day of our lives, unfortunately. And part of that is because we as women are so driven, and men as well. But I think sometimes because the multiple hats that we wear in life, it happens more so. And definitely the last 3 years really showed that. And
Yes.
So perhaps more than ever, we need to have these kind of discussions. Before we get into all of the deep, impactful conversation that we're going to have, I always start with that easy question. What part of the country do you call home? Where do you live?
I am living in Santa Cruz. So if you don't know where that is, it's coastal California, pretty close to the Bay Area.
Yeah, I do know Santa Cruz. I spent some of my working career visiting there every week for a while.
Nice.
So I went up and down the West Coast, so meeting clients. So very, very beautiful place.
It is. That is why we moved here.
Yes. Very expensive, but very beautiful. So we gave just a touch of what you do. Please share your backstory about your journey that has taken you from that young girl out of college to where you are today.
Absolutely. So yeah, on my journey, I've done a few different things with my life. I spent, 12 years as a holistic healthcare practitioner. And then I switched careers and went into user experience design, designing software and spending time in tech. And in both spaces, I managed to burn out. So I know it's not just the job, right? And so the last burnout that I experienced was pretty intense. And this was, mid-30s. I had just had my first baby, and I hit a wall hard. I mean, I just had I was maybe 6 months into it. But I was working full time, had the young child, married household, the typical stuff, normal life, normal level of responsibilities. But I hit a wall so hard that I could not get out of bed. And, I went to the doctors and I talked to all the people, and essentially there was nothing wrong with me, was what the bottom line was, except for that I was completely fried.
Yeah.
And so that last burnout, I've had a few before that, but it didn't matter as much, because I didn't have I didn't have children that needed me at all hours of the day, and I could actually take a break. Whereas with this, it was I have bills to pay. I have a household to manage. I have children that need me to be my best, and I am flat on my back. So it became very, very critical. The most important thing to me, actually, was to recover from this and to make sure it never happened again. And the reason when I say I help high achieving women is because that's kind of how I've been described and how I perceive myself, right? I love to get things done. I love to be known as the person who gets it done. And I
Yeah.
think that that drive, like the characteristics, which we'll get into, that lead us to success, that can drive us to success, when out of balance, there's like that flip side of the coin. When they're out of balance, they can drive us to burnout. And that was something that I had to realize about myself, that it wasn't just the job, it wasn't just a boss, it wasn't just these external factors, because the external factors come and go. But my tendency to burn out seemed to be a recurring thing. And so I really had to look at those internal factors and the characteristics that I had that drove me to success. They were just going too far and driving me to that burnout. And that's where we talk about those 5 success traps and what those are and what to do about them. But that was really, I guess, like a shifting point for me, where I hit that wall. I was like, this matters. This is actually the most important thing to me right now. And then it continued to be, here I am, helping others, because it matters so much. We have to be able to show up as our best selves for our own sake. But if we're not ready to acknowledge our own sake, for our children, for our careers, for all the things that we've built in our lives that we love and care about. And so it became very important to be able to recover and then to help others.
And I think there's a couple things that people need to maybe sit on for a minute. One, you talked about the fact that when you were young and you didn't have the responsibility, the accountability, it was easy to ignore, to push down the fact that you needed to stop, you needed to rest, you needed self-care, you needed to acknowledge that you needed to slow down. What we don't remember or we don't think about, and being someone who's in their 60s now can say, and also who had a mom that was that way, and now is in her 80s, and the quality of her life, it all catches up to you, people, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're young, maybe you're not young, maybe you're in your 40s and your 50s, it's not too late to try to make a change, because it will catch up with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the changes they're hard, because any change is hard. Like as an adult, learning is change management. Like if you're doing something different in your life, you're dealing with change. But really it's not actually that hard. Like there's small changes, small shifts that we can make. Big mindset shifts are the big ones. That can make a really big difference in turning that around.
And it is frustrating. You said, well, there wasn't anything physically wrong with you. And a lot of times that's another reason why people ignore it. Well, I'm not crazy. I feel this, but if there's nothing physically wrong with me, then I just am going to ignore it and it will go away.
Right.
But it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
It doesn't necessarily go away. Right. And there are physical symptoms. Like oftentimes people will complain of migraines that, there's no clear source, like why you're getting migraines, or the stomach aches from the dread. One, I don't know if you would call it physical, but I felt like it was physical, was Fridays, feeling like my soul was just being sucked out of my body, because I knew I had to come back on Monday. Like the dread was that deep. I just felt my whole body just kind of like, just sucked down, because I just didn't want to come back. And I guess we could talk about like the feelings, like what does it feel like to be headed towards burnout? Like what are those symptoms?
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Not a diagnosis, like how do we know we're going that direction? What does it mean? And so common ones are, there's the typical signs of stress, right? So irritability, anxiety, insomnia, poor concentration, like I said, the gut problems, headaches. And those are signs that maybe the job stress is getting to you. It's not necessarily burnout, but it is definitely like hey, pay attention, right? And then when we get to cynicism and detachment and feeling kind of like resentful, I think resentment is actually a big one. Like if you feel resentful towards your job,
or your family.
or
It
your
could
family.
be,
Yes,
it
it
could
goes
be
all
that mom.
around.
It could be that mom that doesn't work outside of the home,
Hmm.
but is totally burned out.
Yes, yes. And it happens, it can be multifaceted. Like my experience was multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
My health was in the gutter. My energy levels were gone. I hated my job. I felt guilt
Yeah.
more than resentment towards the motherhood situation. Um, but yeah, I've definitely encountered resentment towards, and I feel like this is not maybe something that we talk about a lot, but it's something that I encounter a lot when I'm talking to women one on one, is that most of us feel trapped by our lives. And that
Yeah.
means the good parts of our lives too, including the ones we
Mm-hmm.
love. We feel trapped. And then we start feeling resentment towards feeling trapped. And we feel like we can't break out, and we start to feel cynical, and then detachment,
Yeah.
and that almost disassociation or lack of emotional involvement is kind of like at the tail end, like when you're not getting out of bed, when you're not able to perform, when it starts affecting your performance.
Mm-hmm.
That really stinks, because what happens there is it begins to affect your confidence.
Yeah.
If you're not able to get out of bed, worst case scenario, or you're not able to show up and do your job like you could a year ago or 2 years ago, it affects your confidence. And confidence is so precious.
Mm-hmm.
It matters, having that confidence to be able to walk into a room and be like, I've got this. And as that dwindles, then it turns into this spiral, and it's just gnarly. It gets really, it has gotten dark and deep for many, many women that I've spoken to. So essentially the symptoms are like, those stress symptoms, right? But when they're not going away, and maybe you've had the normal amount of time to rest, you've rested over the
Yeah.
weekend, say, and you come back on Monday and you're not ready to go, you still feel the same, like that's a big red flag. Other red flags to look for are resentment, cynicism, and detachment.
And you also have to think about the fact that you talked about not the confidence in the job and whatnot, but you have to also think if you're a mother, if you're a team lead, if you're a supervisor or manager, people are watching. And you are setting an example. You are displaying something that is not projecting the image that you want.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you start feeling that resentment and cynicism, it might be an internal thing for you. Others can pick up on it. They may not be
Mm,
able to stick a label on it, but something's off
yeah.
and they know it. It is affecting others' perception of you. It is affecting your job performance.
Yeah.
So it's really important to turn that around before it derails what matters to you in your life.
So let's talk about those 5 success traps that lead
Absolutely.
to burnout.
Right. So these are the behaviors that they're like sides of a coin. There's a positive side and a negative side. And they often lead us to success, right? Because we're so driven. But out of balance, or when another way I'd like to think of it is when that behavior is driven or rooted in fear, they can push us beyond success to burnout. And that's when we want to correct, or ideally before. But if we're out of burnout, it's time to correct. And so the first of these success traps, and it's really a behavior, is people pleasing. And so that's when, you are constantly overworking and you're driven by the need for
Yeah.
approval, and you want to be known as the go-to person who can always get things done. You want to make your boss happy. You want to make your spouse happy. You want to make your kids happy. You want to make everybody happy. Um, and you push yourself past your limits. You take on more than you should in order to make others happy, or at least to avoid their dissatisfaction. And when we think about the fears that drive these things, I'll do that at the end. But so there's people pleasing. The second behavior, which I think most of us are familiar with, I think it's talked about more, which is perfectionism. And so, it's both a blessing and a curse. You're known for being the person who is detail oriented and very exacting and has high standards. At the same time, you could always be pushing beyond the limits of a project. Like, it only needs to be done to here, but you're going to take it to here, even though that's not necessarily the
Needed.
goal or relevant to the project. And the downside to that is it drains you. And if you're standards are significantly higher than everyone else's, it's very easy to feel resentful. Because you feel like you're the one that's pushing, you're the one that's pushing, you're the one that's raising the bar constantly. And becoming obsessed over minute details. And it drives, it can lead to superior results, like I said, but it also stirs up stress, anxiety, and eventually burnout. The third is overextending. And so this is when we are always stepping up and taking on more than our fair share. So if you're always volunteering to take on more, you see a problem that needs to be solved, you're like, I'll go do that, even though you already have a full plate. That's that overextending. It's taking on more than is your responsibility, which can also, like I said, it's the flip side of a coin. On the positive side, you get to be, you build a reputation for being the one that gets it done. People can always rely on you. You're the one they're going to come to. Flip side is that if you are overextending, you might be spending more resources than you have in terms of your own energy without replenishment. And that can lead to burnout. The fourth one is helping. And like I said, it's the flip side. Helping is good. Helping others is a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's a very caring thing. And the flip side is if you're constantly helping other people without meeting your own needs, without filling your own cup and making sure you've got something to give from, it puts you into like this, I want to say like energy debt, but you start to feel like the table isn't balanced, and it does lead to resentment if you're always putting others first, always prioritizing others, always. And a lot of us have been taught this since we were kids, like always put others first, turn the other cheek. To be helpers, we've been taught to be helpers, which in some ways is good. Gone too far is not good. Like it can lead you to burnout. And then the fifth is that overachieving, right? When we have big dreams, big goals, the checklist that never ends, and guilty here. And when you're just constantly pushing, and you are in a state of execution all of the time, you are either doing or you are passed out. But there's no space in your life for being or existing as a person. There's no recovery time. There's no rest, unless it's on your to-do list, maybe. If you don't deprioritize
whatever
it.
works.
Yeah. And so that overachieving, that going for the next big thing, and then another thing that I see that women that do this are guilty of or tend to have a habit of is not acknowledging their current success, or not acknowledging or celebrating the steps that they're taking. They're not celebrating, they're not acknowledging. Once it's done, it's behind them. There's no hurrah, yay me, let's go out to lunch, let's celebrate, or even like a pat on the back, do a Mel Robin high five in the mirror. Nothing's happening. It's gone. It's done. It's put there behind them and they're on to the next thing. So there's never a cycle of celebration and acknowledgement. And that can lead to burnout.
Yeah.
So those are the five, what I call the success traps, these ways of behaving that lead us to success, but out of balance can also lead us to burnout.
Yeah. So very true. And, and I think the last one you gave, that recognizing, that also helps to avoid the resentment piece that you have. But in one of my groups that I work with, every week we talk about the small wins, just because to bring it to attention that you did have a win. And it doesn't have to be that you climbed Mount Everest, but it's just the small things. Maybe it was that you got out of bed and didn't, have to have a snooze hit 5 times or something. Just that you ate a good breakfast or whatever. It's just to get used to celebrating the small things, the good.
Yeah. It is so
whenever you talk about success, and I think it's important that we talk about how to step into your authentic alignment with purpose, because if you're helping others, if you're doing for others, if you're all this, you're not addressing your purpose. And to me, purpose is what keeps us young. So talk to me about that.
Absolutely. That is one of the first steps that we go through when, when women come to me, we're going through our program to end burnout, is stepping into authentic alignment with our own values and finding our own purpose. Because oftentimes we are so wrapped up in layers and layers and layers of expectations and
Yeah.
obligations and responsibilities and all of the things that we should do. Whether it's I should be running every morning, or I should be doing this for my kids, making them a homemade meal every night, or I should be chasing the next promotion, or I should be doing this for so and so, or I should. And we try to cut through all the shoulds, and find what actually matters to us, like our true values, and then align that to what matters to us. So there's like the who we are, which is our kind of like our value system, our characteristics, the things that make us unique. And there's what matters to us right now. And I believe that purpose is something that evolves as we evolve. So in every season of life, perhaps your purpose shifts, right? And it's good to know that, because if it shifts and you didn't shift what you're chasing, you might end up with like a disconnect between where you are and where you want to be. But yeah, so we find out what matters to you right now, and then bring those two things together. And then that's the purpose for this season or for this moment of life. And that's really, really, really important, because a lot of us struggle to say no effectively. Even if we're not actively saying yes, by not saying no to something, we're saying yes. And so our lives just get taken over by all of the demands, because, we're highly effective people. Everyone wants us to do something. And so by understanding what it is that your purpose is pulling you towards, understanding what actually matters to you, you can start to carve out space for it. You can say yes to that thing in your life with intention. And because it matters so deeply to you, you'll keep those boundaries up, right? You're not having boundaries for the sake of having boundaries. You're having boundaries because this is what matters to you.
Yeah.
And by saying yes to that and making space for it, you're automatically saying no to other things that are just noise, that aren't going to pull you in the right direction. So that's why that authentic alignment with your values and stepping into your purpose is so powerful, because it gives you something solid to stand on.
Yeah. So, I teach public speaking and leading with your heart, your head, and your hands. And so finding your voice is something that I'm always talking to people about. Why do you say finding your voice is the key to ending burnout?
So there's a few steps to finding your voice. Well, the first we just discussed, which is what matters to you. And then there's expression. And so being able to ask for what you want and get it is a life skill. And oftentimes we don't do it. We just get what other people want for us. We don't ask for what we want, or sometimes we don't even know what we want, which is that first step, figuring out what we want. But yeah, so being able to ask for what you want, being able to say no to what you don't want, and there's several ways you can say no to things, are very powerful skills. And then there's more than just asking for what you want and saying no to what you don't want. There's also expressing what you're passionate about. And so when I think of voice, I think of expression. And so for some women, finding the way that they express themselves, it can be something like, one of my clients likes to crochet. And so she feels like she's expressing a part of her soul that has been ignored for a decade when she crochets in between meetings. And I'm like, all right. So it could be anything. It could be that. It could be writing, sharing your thoughts. It could be speaking, like you're saying, like getting up in front of people and actually communicating a message. Very powerful. It could be movement. And I have a colleague of mine who says that she likes to, what does she call it? It's like painting in sweat is what she calls it. She likes to move. Like she gets she feels like she's expressing herself when she's sweating. And I'm like, okay, so I feel like expression can take a bunch of different forms. And that what each of us needs is going to be very unique to the individual. But finding your voice, like I said, it's a little bit holistic. It's a holistic thing. There's the expressing what you want, saying no to what you don't want, and then expressing your passions and being who you are, existing and taking up space. Yeah.
So when we talk about all this, the yes, the no's, and all this, what's the difference between our setting boundaries and finding balance? And why does it matter?
Oh, this is something like when I first started on this journey, I was like, who cares about balance? It's all about boundaries. Build those walls, put up the fortress, don't let anybody in. As a reaction to maybe being, without boundaries. Um, but they're different things. So I used to think of balance as like you're standing on one foot and you're trying to do it all, like, and maintaining, a taut core. And I'm like, oh, that's just so hard. And I was like, oh, it's not actually that kind of balance. It's a different kind of balance. It's more like, the yin and yang symbol where you have dark and light existing together.
Yeah.
And so I think of it more like, um, say, like when you're building muscle, right? So you have a really intense period of activity, right? Where you're stressing the muscle.
The muscle. Mm-hmm.
It will not grow unless you rest the muscle.
Yeah.
And so it's a yin and a yang, it's a balance. So it's like you need to have both forces in place. And so when I understood that and kind of shifted from balancing is like, the pictures of the women like juggling their kids and stuff, like it's not that. That's not balance. That's not what we're talking about here. So balance is making space in your life for that quiet energy, making space in your life for existing and being a person, as opposed to doing and executing at all times, unless you're passed out. So, like, finding that balance. That's what I mean by balance. And then boundaries are when you decide that you know what's important to you and you're ready to go out there and claim some space for that thing that matters to you. And that's when, there's very practical things that you can do, from like color coding your calendar, having negotiations with your boss, delegating things to, there's a ton of very, very practical, tactical ways to create boundaries in your life. But essentially it's just claiming space for what you want. And knowing that what you want can change. And the environment that you are in can change. So you might have a great conversation with your boss. Like I did this before. I was like, okay, I'm totally fine working with people in this time zone and in this time zone and the work, crazy hours, but these hours between 4 and 7 p.m. Pacific are sacred to me because I get to pick up my kids and spend time with them before they go to bed. So I don't want to take meetings during these times. I don't care if I have a 7 a.m. meeting. I don't care if I have a 9 p.m. meeting, but I care about this time slot. And they're like, great. 6 months later, I have a new boss. And so you have to do it again. So boundaries, like, come up, they don't necessarily stay up. You have to keep reinforcing them and adjusting them based on what is now important to you and what the circumstances look like.
Yeah. When you said can, I thought, no, you mean will. They will change.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's time for rapid fire. I think we can just do one. What are some ways you, Hannah, relieve stress?
Ooh, how do I relieve stress? Okay. Well, my favorite thing, like if I feel like I am gonna like hit my own version of a wall, which my standards are much higher than they used to be, I go get a massage. And that's like a reset for me. I love getting a massage. So that does amazing things for me. But that's like a big, like a splurge, or like a fun thing, or monthly. But on a more regular basis, movement goes a long way, and it does not have to be a workout. So, I have this, I've got the Peloton during the pandemic, like, many other people. If I just get on that thing and pedal, I don't even have to be dressed for a workout. I can have my laptop in front of me, be on a call, but just moving my legs for a few minutes here and there throughout the day takes the edge off. So for me, that's powerful. There's other things I have, I take a tea time where I walk away from screens, for 5 minutes here and there and just have my tea without anything glowing in my face, which is super hard to do sometimes, but it's only 5 minutes and it makes a difference. So yeah, so I have like a toolkit of strategies and of tactics that I use. Some of them take 5 minutes and are free. Some of them take 2 minutes and are free. Some of them, it's an hour and I'm going to go to a spa. So it has the full spectrum. I use the one that's appropriate for the moment.
For me, I always found that like when my brain was stuck or if I was stressing out, that's when my house was the cleanest because I would do the mindless things of sweeping the floor, scrubbing the floor, or doing things that were just, I didn't have to think about what I was doing. and it allowed my brain to slow down and to settle down. And then I oftentimes solved any problems that I had just because I did take that pause. So, as you said, it doesn't have to be a exercise formal type of thing, even a yoga, which I love to do, but just doing that mindless ironing, scrubbing, sweeping floors can give you that brain rest if you need.
Absolutely. Like folding laundry is another one that I like to do. Just fold the
Absolutely.
laundry, let your mind do its thing.
I know.
Yeah, it's like that white space in life, that margin, you know?
Yeah. All right, it's time now for me to share my screen. So if you have enjoyed as much as I have had talking with Hannah, I have her contact information. So if you're just listening, you know the drill. I will share my screen, but give you orally her website information. You can get all this information on my website of findyourleadershipconfidence.com, as well as my YouTube channel. So please subscribe to that, Vicki Noethling. And the website is serenesuccess.net. That's serenesuccess.net. On Facebook, you can go find her at Hannah Lynn Love, and LinkedIn and Instagram, Serene Success, making sure that all of you do learn more about what you can find on her serenesuccess.net website. I'm going to turn it over to Hannah to talk to you about that. So Hannah, it's all yours.
Absolutely. So I offer I call it like a diagnostic call where we go through and kind of identify, like, are you heading towards a burnout? What are the success traps that you're experiencing? What's holding you back from having the life that you really want? And then we also develop a vision of what burnout-free life would look like for you. And it's a fun call, no pressure or anything like that, but it's a good experience, and people do enjoy them. So that is available from the link that she's got up right now. And then there's also a free masterclass that you can take and kind of go deeper on these topics.
Perfect. Hannah, it was so much fun talking to you. You gave some really great points. I think that, it's probably very rare that you find anyone that hasn't experienced some sort of burnout in their lives. And maybe they're experiencing it right now. So you gave some wonderful tips and advice for the audience. And I thank you so much for being a guest.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it a ton. And then I'm fairly new at being a podcast guest. So if you wanted to leave me a review on Podmatch, I'd appreciate it. And then, of course, I'll leave reviews as well.
Awesome. And as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling, signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.